evening started like countless others in our marriage, with Sarah and her friends plotting their latest scheme to humiliate me. As I stood in the doorway of our Newport Beach home, watching them huddle over their laptops planning their upcoming Amalfi Coast trip, I had no idea that their attempt to exclude me would become the very thing that exposed their true colors. "So it's settled then," Victoria's voice carried from our living room, dripping with smug satisfaction. "We'll book the 4 connecting premium suites at Sirenuse, one for each of us. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." The clink of wine glasses and burst of laughter that followed made my jaw clench. I lingered in the hallway, out of sight but within earshot. Sarah, my wife of 15 years, sat surrounded by her 3 closest friends, Victoria, Isabella, and Katherine. Their designer handbags were scattered across our imported Italian furniture like expensive breadcrumbs, marking their territory. But Sarah, Katherine's voice held fake concern. "What about Michael? Where will he stay if we take all the premium suites?" More laughter followed, the kind that felt like glass shards under skin. "Oh, please," Sarah dismissed with a wave of her manicured hand. "Michael wouldn't know what to do with himself at Sirenuse anyway. He'd probably try to order room service hamburgers." The women erupted in practiced mirth, their jewelry catching the light as they shook with laughter. "Remember that time he asked for ketchup at that Michelin-starred restaurant in Paris?" Victoria added, her voice thick with mockery. "The sommelier looked like he was going to faint." I watched as my wife, the woman who'd promised to love and respect me, wiped tears of laughter from her eyes. "That's nothing. Last month he actually suggested we vacation at a regular beach resort. Can you imagine? No Michelin stars, no exclusive access, probably not even proper thread count on the sheets." The women's horrified gasps would have been comical if they weren't so cruel. I stepped into the room then, making my presence known. The laughter died immediately, replaced by poorly concealed smirks. "Michael!" Sarah's voice carried false brightness. "We didn't hear you come in. We're just finalizing some details for our summer trip." "I heard," I replied evenly, walking to our wine cellar. "The Sirenuse, quite a choice." Victoria raised her eyebrow, adjusting her Hermes scarf with practiced nonchalance. "Oh, you know it." "I've heard of it," I said carefully, selecting a bottle of wine. As I poured their glasses with practiced precision, I could feel their judgmental stares. "It's quite exclusive," Isabella said slowly, as if explaining something to a child. "Very sophisticated." The emphasis on the last word made it clear she didn't consider me part of that category. "And expensive," Katherine added with a smirk. "The premium suites are simply to die for, though I suppose that's not really your area of expertise, is it, Michael?" I set down the wine bottle, meeting Sarah's eyes. "And where exactly am I supposed to stay during this trip?" The women exchanged glances before breaking into fresh peals of laughter. Sarah at least had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. "Honey, this is a girls' trip. You know that. Besides, you're always so busy with work." "Right," Victoria interrupted. "All those mysterious business trips, though I've never quite understood what it is you do exactly. Something with money." Her tone made it clear she didn't believe I could be successful at anything. I left them to their planning, their mockery following me down the hall. In my study, I opened my laptop and checked my emails. The latest update from Sirenuse's management team was waiting in my inbox, along with the final paperwork for my latest investment in the property. What Sarah and her friends didn't know, what they could never have imagined in their designer-clad bubble, was that their precious Sirenuse had recently undergone a change in ownership, and I now controlled a significant portion of it, including all premium suite allocations. I clicked through to the reservation system, noting how Sarah and her friends had requested the 4 connecting premium suites. With a few keystrokes, I could see their submitted preferences, specific views, particular amenities, special requests for their exclusive vacation. Then I opened another email, this one confirming my own reservation. Not for one of the premium suites they coveted, but for something far better, something they didn't even know existed yet. As their laughter echoed through our house, I finalized my plans. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, it's simply letting people's own actions reveal their true nature, and Sarah and her friends were about to learn that lesson in the most expensive way possible. I picked up my phone and dialed a familiar number. Giuseppe? Yes, everything is proceeding as planned. Make sure their 4 premium suite requests are handled exactly as we discussed. I paused, listening to his response. And the Positano suite? Renovation? Excellent. No, they don't need to know about it yet. They'll find out soon enough. Setting down my phone, I could hear Sarah and her friends in the living room, still chattering about their upcoming trip, still making jokes at my expense. Let them laugh, I thought. Their amusement would be short-lived once they discovered who really held the keys to their luxury getaway. The sound of breaking glass, followed by apologies and giggles, drifted down the hall, probably another expensive wine glass sacrificed to their tipsy planning session. I opened my safe and pulled out a blue folder marked Le Sirenuse Acquisition. Inside were the documents proving my partial ownership of the hotel, along with the designs for the new Positano suite, the most exclusive accommodation on the entire Amalfi Coast. Sarah and her friends thought they were planning the perfect luxury getaway. What they were actually planning was their own humiliation, and I would be there to watch every perfectly curated moment of it fall apart. Little did they know, but their carefully orchestrated summer trip was about to become a lesson in humility they would never forget. Sometimes the most expensive room isn't just about the price tag, it's about who has the power to book it. The next morning, I woke to the sound of Sarah's excited voice echoing through our house. She was on a video call with Victoria and Katherine, their voices carrying that distinctive tone of smug superiority that had become the soundtrack of my marriage. The Le Sirenuse just confirmed our connecting suites, Sarah announced proudly. All 4 premium terrace suites with the best views of Positano. We'll have the entire west wing of the top floor to ourselves. Perfect, Victoria purred. Did you see the private terraces? They're absolutely massive. The photos we'll get for Instagram will be to die for. I made my way downstairs, deliberately making my presence known. Sarah glanced up briefly, but didn't pause her conversation. On her laptop screen, Victoria and Katherine's faces were perfectly made up despite the early hour, their backgrounds showing equally immaculate luxury homes. Oh, look, it's the hamburger connoisseur, Victoria snickered, noticing me in the background. Sarah, darling, has he figured out where he's staying yet? Sarah laughed, that practiced laugh I'd grown to detest. He'll probably book himself into some basic business hotel in Naples. You know, Michael, always practical. She said the word like it was an insult. I poured my coffee, letting their mockery wash over me. Actually, I said casually, I've already made my arrangements at Le Sirenuse. All 3 women froze momentarily before breaking into peals of laughter. You? Katherine managed between giggles. At Le Sirenuse? In what, the broom closet? Don't be ridiculous, Katherine, Victoria chimed in. They probably have a lovely staff quarters somewhere in the basement. Sarah turned to me, her expression a mix of amusement and condescension. Honey, I don't think you understand. Le Sirenuse is fully booked for those dates. We took the last available premium suites. I took a deliberate sip of my coffee. Did you? How interesting. Something in my tone made Sarah's perfectly shaped eyebrows furrow slightly. What do you mean? Nothing at all. I'm sure you ladies have everything perfectly planned as usual. I headed toward my study, letting their confused silence linger behind me. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. What was that about? I heard Victoria demand as I walked away. Since when does Michael act so confident about luxury hotels? Sarah's response was too quiet to hear, but I didn't need to. The seed of doubt had been planted. I settled at my desk and opened my laptop, checking the latest emails from the hotel's management team. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Phone buzzed with a message from Giuseppe. Mr. Michael, the special arrangements are confirmed. The staff has been briefed on the protocol we discussed. I smiled, typing back a quick response. Perfect. And the renovation photos? Ready to be revealed at exactly the right moment, came the reply. The sound of heels clicking on hardwood announced Sarah's approach before she appeared in my study doorway. What are you up to? She demanded, her voice carrying an edge of uncertainty I'd never heard before. I looked up innocently. Just handling some business matters. Don't you have more trip planning to do with your friends? You're being weird about this hotel thing, she accused. If you're trying to make some kind of point. A point? I interrupted smoothly, like the point you and your friends have been making about me for years, about how I'm not sophisticated enough for your social circle, not worthy of your luxury vacations. She had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable, but recovered quickly. Don't be dramatic, Michael. We just want to have a girls' trip without someone who might embarrass you. I finished for her. Don't worry, Sarah. I won't be embarrassing anyone on this trip. Before she could respond, her phone chimed with new messages. I watched as she read them, her face paling slightly. This is impossible, she muttered. What's impossible? She looked up, confusion evident in her expression. The hotel just sent an update about our reservations. They're moving us to different suites because of some last-minute renovation work on the West Wing. How unfortunate, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I'm sure the other suites will be just as nice. They're not the premium terrace suites, she said, her voice rising with indignation. They're just regular suites. Victoria's going to have a meltdown. She stared at me suspiciously. Did you have something to do with this? I stood up, straightening my jacket. What could I possibly have to do with the Sirenuse's renovation schedule? I don't know, she said slowly. But you're acting strange. First that comment about having made arrangements, now this. What aren't you telling me? Isn't it interesting? I mused. How quickly you assume I'm capable of influencing a luxury hotel's operations when something goes wrong. Yet you and your friends have spent years treating me like I'm beneath such establishments. Her phone buzzed again repeatedly, probably Victoria and Katherine reacting to the news about their downgraded suites. Sarah read the messages, her face growing increasingly troubled. They're threatening to cancel the trip, she said. Victoria says there's no point in going if we can't have the premium suites. Our entire summer plan is falling apart. I walked past her toward the door, pausing briefly. You know what the funny thing about plans is, Sarah? Sometimes they don't work out the way you expect. Sometimes they work out exactly the way someone else intended. I left her standing in my study, her phone still buzzing with angry messages from her friends. Through the window, I could see her reflection as she slowly sat down in my desk chair, the reality of her situation beginning to sink in. My own phone vibrated with another message from Giuseppe. The Positano suite preparations are ahead of schedule. When would you like us to inform the other guests about the new ownership structure? I typed back. Not yet. Let's wait until they arrive. Some revelations are best served in person. Sarah's voice carried down the hallway as she tried to calm her friend's fury over their ruined plans. Soon they would learn that losing their premium suites was just the beginning. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about taking something away. It's about revealing what was really there all along. And in this case, What was there was about to turn their perfect luxury vacation into a lesson they'd never forget. The next few days brought chaos to our normally perfectly ordered household. Sarah's phone buzzed constantly with messages from her friends, each one more panicked than the last about their ruined vacation plans. I watched from the sidelines as their carefully constructed world began to crack. "This is a nightmare," Sarah announced one morning, storming into my study without knocking. Her usual perfectly styled hair was slightly disheveled, and she clutched her phone like a lifeline. "Do you know what the hotel just told Victoria? Not only are we not getting our premium suites back, but they've actually downgraded us again to standard rooms." I looked up from my laptop, where I'd been reviewing the latest renovation photos of the Positano suite. "How unfortunate." "Unfortunate?" she snapped. "It's humiliating. We've been posting about this trip for months. Everyone knows we booked the premium suites. Now we'll be staying in rooms that—" She shuddered. "Regular tourists could book." "The horror," I said dryly. "Almost as humiliating as having your wife and her friends mock you for years about not being sophisticated enough for their luxury vacations." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "You did have something to do with this, didn't you?" Before I could respond, her phone rang. She answered it on speaker, probably hoping I'd hear whatever complaints her friends had now. "Sarah," Victoria's voice was shrill, "you won't believe what just happened. I tried to call my contact at the hotel. You know, the one who supposedly could get us anything we wanted. He doesn't work there anymore. In fact, they're telling me the hotel has new partial owners and everything's being reorganized." I suppressed a smile as Sarah's face paled. "New owners?" she repeated, staring at me. "When did this happen?" "Recently," I offered helpfully. "Very recently." Katherine's voice joined the call. "It gets worse. I just tried to pull rank by dropping my family name. You know how much influence we usually have at these places, but they actually laughed at me." "Laughed," the manager said, and I quote, "Perhaps Madame would be more comfortable at a different hotel if our accommodations aren't suitable." "They can't treat us like this," Victoria fumed. "Don't they know who we are?" I stood up, straightening my jacket. "Actually, they know exactly who you are, just like they know exactly who I am." Sarah's hand dropped, nearly losing grip on her phone. "Michael, what did you do?" "Me." I walked to my safe, deliberately taking my time as I entered the combination. "I simply made some business arrangements. Isn't that what you've always said I do? Make boring, practical business decisions that couldn't possibly interest your sophisticated friends." From the safe, I withdrew a leather portfolio with the Sirenuse logo embossed in gold. Sarah's eyes fixed on it like a hawk. "Oh my God," Katherine's voice came through the phone. "Sarah, you need to see the email I just got from the hotel. They're inviting us to a special reception on our first night to meet the new partial owner." "Let me guess." Victoria's voice dripped sarcasm. "It's probably some stuffy old Italian businessman who—" "Actually," I interrupted loudly enough for them to hear, "it's me." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah's phone slipped from her fingers, clattering onto my desk. I could see Victoria and Katherine's contact photos on the screen, their expressions frozen in mid-sentence. "What do you mean, it's you?" Sarah whispered. I opened the portfolio, removing the ownership documents and architectural plans. "Remember all those boring business trips you never bothered to ask about? All those times you and your friends mocked me for not understanding luxury? I wasn't just working, Sarah. I was building something that's now worth more than all your designer handbags combined." But... Sarah struggled to find words as she stared at the papers I laid out before her. "The Sirenuse is one of the most exclusive hotels on the Amalfi Coast," I continued calmly, "and I now own a significant portion of it. including, as it happens, all premium suite allocations. Victoria's voice cracked through the phone. That's impossible. You can't what? I asked pleasantly. Can't appreciate fine things, can't understand luxury, can't possibly be sophisticated enough for your social circle. I paused, letting each question sink in. Or can't be the reason you've all just been downgraded to standard. Rooms? Sarah picked up one of the architectural drawings with trembling hands. What's this? The Positano suite? I've never heard of it. That's because it doesn't exist yet, I explained. At least not officially. It's a new addition we've been working on in secret. The most exclusive suite on the entire Amalfi Coast. Private infinity pool, dedicated staff, views that make your premium suites look like they're facing a parking lot. And let me guess, Katherine's voice was bitter. You've booked it for yourself? Naturally. I gathered the papers back into the portfolio, though I did consider offering it to you ladies. But then I remembered all those times you joked about my taste level, all those snide comments about how I wouldn't know luxury if it hit me in the face. I smiled. It would be such a waste to offer such sophistication to someone who thinks I belong in the staff quarters, wouldn't it? Sarah sank into a chair, her perfect posture crumbling. All this time, while we were mocking you, you were so busy and trying to prove your social status that you never bothered to see what was right in front of you, I finished for her, rather like those premium suites you lost. Sometimes the best view isn't the one you're looking at, but the one looking back at you. Victoria's voice came through, smaller now. We could try to book another hotel. You could, I agreed. But then you'd have to explain to all your followers why you're not staying at Sirenuse after bragging about it for months. Imagine the damage to your carefully curated image. The silence that followed was broken only by the soft ping of another email arriving on their phones. I knew what it was. I'd timed it perfectly. Oh my God, Katherine breathed. They just sent photos of the Positano suite. Sarah, you need to see this. I watched as Sarah opened the email, her face draining of color, as she scrolled through images of what would be the most talked-about luxury accommodation in Italy. Every detail she'd ever bragged about in other hotels was there, but elevated to a level she'd never imagined. The suite will be featured in Architectural Digest next month, I mentioned casually. Right around the time of your stay, I believe. They're particularly interested in the contrast between it and the standard rooms. I let that sink in. I do hope you'll all be comfortable in your new accommodations. As Sarah stared at me, tears welling in her perfectly made-up eyes, I picked up my phone to make one final call. Giuseppe? Yes, everything is proceeding as planned. Please make sure our guests receive their updated room assignments, and do make sure they have a perfect view of the Positano suite from their standard rooms. After all, we wouldn't want them to miss out on true luxury. The Sirenuse's private transfer service from Naples Airport told its own story of their fall from grace. Instead of the fleet of luxury vehicles Sarah and her friends had originally booked, they found themselves sharing a single van. I, meanwhile, was already at the hotel, having arrived earlier on the private helicopter service reserved exclusively for VIP guests. This is mortifying, I heard Victoria hiss as they pulled up to the hotel entrance. There are people from our country club here. They're going to see us being delivered like regular tourists. From my vantage point on the Positano Suite's private terrace, I could see everything unfold. Sarah, Victoria, and Katherine stood amid their designer luggage, trying to maintain their dignity as regular hotel porters, not the personal butlers they'd requested, began collecting their bags. Ladies, Antonio, the general manager, greeted them with professional courtesy, but none of the fawning deference they were used to. Welcome to Le Sirenuse. I trust your transfer was adequate. Sarah's face flushed at his tone. There must have been some mistake with our booking, she attempted, her voice carrying that entitled edge I knew so well. We originally had the premium terrace suites. Ah, yes. Antonio consulted his tablet with exaggerated care. There was a situation with those suites, but not to worry. We've accommodated you in our standard rooms. They're quite comfortable, I assure you. Many of our regular guests find them perfectly suitable. The word regular hit them like a physical blow. These were women who had never been regular anything in their lives. But surely, Katherine stepped forward, dropping names of luxury hotels where she claimed to have influence. You could make some arrangements. I'm afraid not, Antonio replied smoothly. Those decisions now rest with our new partial owner, speaking of whom. He gestured upward toward where I stood. All three women followed his gesture, their faces turning ashen as they spotted me on the terrace of the Positano suite. The contrast couldn't have been more perfect, them standing amid their excessive luggage in the driveway, me enjoying a perfectly crafted espresso from my private viewpoint above. Michael. Sarah's voice carried a note of desperation I'd never heard before. Please, this is embarrassing. You've made your point. I took my time responding, letting them feel the weight of every eye in the courtyard on them. Other guests had started to notice the scene, particularly those who recognized Sarah and her friends from their countless social media posts about their upcoming exclusive stay. Point, I called down pleasantly. I'm just enjoying the hotel I partially own. Isn't that what you always wanted? For me to appreciate luxury? Victoria stepped forward, her designer heels wobbling slightly on the cobblestones. This is ridiculous. You can't what? I interrupted, my voice carrying clearly in the courtyard's perfect acoustics. Can't understand sophisticated things? Can't appreciate fine hotels? Can't possibly know what real luxury is? I paused. Isn't that what you've been saying about me for years? A murmur went through the gathering crowd of guests. I recognized several faces from Sarah's social circle, people who had liked and commented on her boastful posts about the premium suites they'd booked. Sir, Antonio called up to me with perfect timing. Shall I show our guests to their rooms? They're in the east wing, the one with the partial view of the service entrance. Of course, I nodded, and please make sure they receive the special welcome package we discussed. Sarah's voice shook. What welcome package? A porter appeared with 3 elegant blue folders, identical to the ones I'd shown Sarah in my study, but with very different contents. Inside were photos of the premium suites they'd lost, the Positano suite they'd never have, and printouts of every social media post they'd made mocking me over the years. Just a little reminder, I said as they flipped through the pages. Their faces growing paler by the second, of how quickly things can change when you underestimate people. Katherine was the first to break. I can't stay here, she announced, turning to leave. I'll book another hotel. Of course, Antonio agreed smoothly. Though I should mention, as per Mr. Michael's arrangement with other luxury hotels in the area, they're all mysteriously fully booked for your dates. Something about a large business conference. He glanced at me with perfect understanding. The reality of their situation finally seemed to dawn on them. They were trapped, forced to stay in standard rooms at the very hotel they'd bragged about, while I enjoyed the most luxurious suite above them. Your rooms are ready, Antonio announced, though I should mention, the elevator to your wing is currently under maintenance. I'm afraid you'll need to use the stairs. All 4 flights of them. I watched as their designer luggage was carried up the stairs by regular porters, their pristine Louis Vuitton trunks bumping against the walls. Sarah looked up at me one last time, her eyes pleading. Enjoy your stay, I called down. I'm sure you'll find the accommodations adequate. After all, isn't that what you always said about my taste level? As they disappeared into the hotel, following their luggage up the stairs, I could hear Victoria's voice echo in the stairwell. I can't believe this is happening. Everyone is going to know. Oh, they already know, I murmured to myself, picking up my phone. With a few taps, I posted my first social media update in years, a perfect shot of the Positano Suite's private infinity pool with the caption, Sometimes real luxury is about who you are, not what you pretend to be. Le Sirenuse, just a new owner within. Minutes, the likes and comments started pouring in, many from the very people Sarah and her friends had been trying to impress all these years. The same people who were now watching them trudge up 4 flights of stairs to their standard rooms. Giuseppe appeared at my side with a fresh espresso. "Shall I arrange for the welcome dinner tonight, sir? The one where we announce the new ownership." "To all guests?" I smiled, imagining Sarah and her friends having to sit through a formal dinner where I would be introduced as the hotel's new partial owner. "Absolutely, and make sure they're seated with a perfect view of my table. After all," I gestured to their room's windows, which looked directly at the service entrance, "it's all about the view, isn't it?" The welcome dinner at Le Sirenuse was a spectacle of calculated elegance. The hotel's legendary restaurant, with its 100 flickering candles and panoramic views of Positano, provided the perfect stage for the evening I had planned. I watched from the Positano suite as Sarah and her friends made their way down from their standard rooms, trying desperately to maintain their dignity. They'd clearly attempted to compensate for their room situation with their appearances. Sarah wore her most expensive gown. Victoria had practically draped herself in jewelry, and Katherine's designer outfit probably cost more than most guests' entire vacations. But even their expensive clothes couldn't hide their discomfort as they were led to their assigned table, directly in view of the raised platform where I would later be introduced, but tucked away near the service entrance. "Mr. Michael," Antonio approached me as I adjusted my tie, "all the arrangements are in place. The press is here, including the reporter from Architectural Digest. And as requested, we've seated all of your wife's social media followers at the surrounding tables." I smiled, noting how Sarah's face fell as she recognized familiar faces at the better-positioned tables, people who had once fawned over her luxury lifestyle posts. "Perfect. And the announcement?" "Scheduled for just after the first course. We've prepared a video presentation of the hotel's new renovations, ending with the reveal of the Positano suite." The dining room hummed with excited conversation as guests took their seats. I could see Sarah and her friends huddled together, their faces tight with anxiety as they realized just how many of their social circle were present to witness their humiliation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Antonio's voice carried across the room, "welcome to Le Sirenuse's special anniversary dinner. Tonight, we have an exciting announcement about the future of our beloved hotel." I waited in the wings as Antonio began the presentation. On the large screens positioned around the room, images of the hotel's history played out. Then came the renovation photos, each more spectacular than the last, leading up to the piece de résistance, the Positano suite. "Oh my God!" I heard someone gasp as the first images appeared. The suite was even more magnificent than the preview photos I'd shown Sarah. The private infinity pool seemed to merge with the Mediterranean. The custom-designed furniture pieces were works of art, and the private garden terrace put every other hotel room in Italy to shame. "And now," Antonio continued, "I am honored to introduce the visionary behind these changes, our new partial owner, Mr. Michael." The spotlight found me as I walked to the platform. The applause was polite but curious. These wealthy guests wanted to know who had managed to secure such a significant stake in their favorite luxury hotel. "Thank you," I began, my voice carrying easily across the hushed room. "Many of you know me, or think you do." My eyes found Sarah's table. "Some of you may have even heard stories about me, about how I don't understand luxury, how I once asked for ketchup in a Michelin-starred restaurant." Quiet laughter rippled through the crowd. "What those people didn't know," I continued, "was that while they were busy mocking my supposed lack of sophistication, I was building something that redefined what true luxury means. The screens behind me showed new images, documents of ownership, architectural plans, financial statements. I watched as understanding dawned on the faces of Sarah's social circle. "You see," I said, my voice taking on an edge of steel, "real luxury isn't about posting the perfect photo or booking the most expensive suite. It's about understanding value, about recognizing quality, about knowing the difference between appearance and substance." Victoria shifted uncomfortably in her chair as I continued. "Some of you may have heard about recent changes to certain room bookings. Premium suites being reassigned, reservations being adjusted." More nervous laughter. "Consider it a lesson in humility. After all, isn't that what luxury is really about? Not just having the best, but deserving it?" Sarah's face had gone completely white. She knew what was coming next. "As your new partial owner, I'm implementing some changes. First, social media influence will no longer be a factor in our booking priorities." I paused, letting that sink in. "No more special treatment for Instagram followers or social status. From now on, true luxury at Le Sirenuse will be based on something far more valuable: genuine appreciation." The screens now showed a series of social media posts, Sarah's and her friends' most boastful messages about their planned stay, juxtaposed with their current standard room assignments. The room filled with poorly concealed snickers. "To demonstrate this new philosophy," I continued, "I've arranged a special tour of the Positano suite, not for our usual VIP guests, but for those currently staying in our standard rooms, so they can see firsthand what real luxury looks like." Sarah's hands clenched around her water glass as I added, "After all, sometimes the best view isn't the one you have, it's the one you've lost." The dinner proceeded with excruciating precision. Course after course was served, each one giving the other guests more time to discuss the shocking revelations. I could hear snippets of conversation. "Can you believe they're in standard rooms?" "All." "Those posts about their premium suites, I heard they have to use the service elevator." By the time dessert was served, Sarah and her friends had barely touched their food. Their social humiliation was complete. Every person they'd ever tried to impress now knew the truth about their fallen status. "One final announcement," I said, returning to the platform. "In honor of our new direction, Le Sirenuse will be starting a scholarship program. We'll be offering stays in our premium suites to people who truly appreciate luxury hospitality, not just those who want to photograph it." The dig was obvious to everyone. Katherine actually got up and left, unable to bear any more. Victoria sat frozen, her face a mask of mortification. And Sarah finally looked at me with something I'd never seen before. Understanding. As the dinner wound down, I made my way to their table. "I trust you'll join me for the suite tour tomorrow. The view from the infinity pool is particularly spectacular at sunrise." "Why are you doing this?" Victoria whispered, her voice cracking. "Doing what?" I asked innocently. "Appreciating luxury? Isn't that what you've been telling me to do for years?" I adjusted my perfectly tailored jacket. "Or did you mean why? Am I showing you exactly what it feels like? To be looked down upon, to be mocked, to be treated as if you don't belong?" Sarah stood up suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. "We get it, Michael. You've won. You've humiliated us completely. Are you happy now?" I looked around the beautiful restaurant, at the 100 flickering candles reflecting in the windows, at the spectacular view of Positano at night. "Actually, I am happy. Because for the first time, you're seeing me, really seeing me. And isn't that what luxury is all about? Seeing things for what they really are." As I walked away, I could hear the whispers following them, the barely concealed laughter, the sound of their expensive heels clicking on the marble floors as they fled to their standard rooms. Sometimes revenge isn't about getting even, it's about making sure people never forget the lesson they've learned. And tomorrow's suite tour would ensure this was a lesson they'd remember for the rest of their lives. The morning of the suite tour dawned bright and clear over Positano, the kind of perfect Mediterranean day that usually had Sarah and her friends staging elaborate photo shoots. Instead, they stood in the hotel lobby looking like they'd barely slept, their designer outfits unable to hide their discomfort. "Good morning, ladies," I greeted them, deliberately cheerful. "I trust you slept well in your accommodations." Victoria's face tightened at my tone. Their standard rooms, while comfortable, had kept them awake with the constant hum of the service elevator, something I'd specifically requested when reassigning their rooms. "Shall we begin the tour?" Antonio appeared at my side, along with the photographer from Architectural Digest. We thought we'd start with the standard rooms for contrast and work our way up to the Positano suite. "Perfect," I agreed, watching Sarah's face pale. After all, it's important to understand the full spectrum of luxury, isn't it? The small group of selected guests, mostly Sarah's social media followers and country club friends, gathered around as Antonio led us to their standard rooms first. The photographer's camera clicked constantly, documenting everything. "As you can see," Antonio gestured to Sarah's room, "our standard accommodations are quite basic, suitable for regular tourists or those who perhaps don't fully appreciate the finer aspects of luxury hospitality." Katherine's hands clenched into fists as someone snickered. The room, while clean and comfortable, was a far cry from the premium suites they'd bragged about booking. Their designer luggage looked absurdly out of place against the simple furnishings. "Notice the lovely view of the service entrance," I added helpfully. "Perfect for those early morning deliveries. I believe the first trucks arrive around 5 a.m. Sarah shot me a look of pure venom, but remained silent. She knew this was only the beginning. As we moved through the hotel, Antonio showed the progression of room categories, each more luxurious than the last. With each stop, the contrast between what Sarah and her friends had boasted about and what they'd actually gotten grew more painfully obvious. "And now," I announced as we reached the top floor, "the piece de résistance, the Positano suite." The doors swung open to reveal what could only be described as paradise. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, making the infinity. A pool seemed to merge with the Mediterranean beyond. Fresh flowers filled custom-designed vases, their scent mixing with the sea breeze that drifted in from the private terrace. "Oh my God," someone whispered as we entered. The suite was even more spectacular in person than in the photos. Every detail had been carefully chosen, every amenity thoughtfully provided. This wasn't just luxury, it was perfection. The suite features a private chef's kitchen, Antonio continued, leading us through, though of course most guests prefer to have our Michelin-starred chef prepare their meals. The dining terrace accommodates 12, perfect for entertaining if one has friends worth entertaining. The dig wasn't subtle. Sarah's planned dinner parties in their premium suites had been a major feature of her social media posts. The master bathroom, I took over the narration, features a tub carved from a single piece of Italian marble. Much more sophisticated than asking for ketchup in a fine restaurant, wouldn't you agree? Victoria actually flinched at that one. The photographer captured every reaction, every moment of their humiliation. And here, I saved the best for last. The private infinity pool terrace. Notice how it overlooks the standard rooms? The view of their windows is particularly clear. One can see everything, including, I imagine, guests trying to take photos to pretend they're staying somewhere more luxurious. The group moved onto the terrace, oohing and ahhing over the spectacular setup. Sarah, Victoria, and Katherine hung back, but I wasn't about to let them escape. "Ladies," I called out, "don't you want to see the view? After all, this is what real luxury looks like. Not the kind you post about on social media, the kind you earn." "How dare you?" Katherine finally burst out. "You're enjoying this, aren't you? Humiliating us in front of everyone. I turned to face them fully. Enjoying it? Like you enjoyed mocking me for years? Like you enjoyed excluding me from your plans? Like you enjoyed making me feel less than you? The terrace fell silent. Even the photographer stopped clicking. The timing couldn't have been better. Victoria had already been forced to disable comments on her social media after too many people asked about their room situation. Katherine's carefully curated image as a luxury travel influencer was crumbling. And Sarah had stopped trying to maintain appearances altogether. I found her later that day, sitting alone by the hotel's main pool. Not the exclusive infinity pool she'd bragged about having access to in her posts. "Enjoying your stay?" I asked, settling into a lounger beside her. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Was any of it real? Us? Or was this all just a long con to humiliate me?" "That's rich," I replied, "coming from someone who spent years trying to humiliate me. Tell me, Sarah, in all the time we were married, did you ever once ask about my business? Ever show genuine interest in what I was building?" She looked away. "I thought I knew. I thought you were just what? Not sophisticated enough? Not worthy of your luxury lifestyle?" I gestured around us. "Funny how perceptions change when the tables turn." A group of guests walked by, openly staring at Sarah. One whispered something, and they all laughed. She flinched, and for a moment I saw understanding dawn in her eyes. "This is how you felt," she whispered. "All those times we mocked you, excluded you. This is what it felt like." "Not quite," I corrected her. "Because you're experiencing this for a week. I experienced it for years." Just then her phone buzzed. She checked it and let out a small sob. "Victoria's husband just posted about buying the rival hotel down the coast. He's announcing their divorce and his new ownership at the same time." Interesting timing, I mused. Though of course I'd coordinated with James on exactly when to make his announcement. The demolition of their social circle was proceeding perfectly. "Everything's falling apart," Sarah said quietly. "Katherine's lifestyle blog sponsors are pulling out after the standard room revelations. Victoria's losing everything in her divorce. And she looked at me. "I lost something I never even knew I had." "You lost the illusion," I corrected her. "The illusion that social status equals class. That posting about luxury equals understanding it. That mocking others somehow makes you superior." A commotion near the entrance drew our attention. Katherine was having what appeared to be a meltdown, screaming at Antonio about the noise from the service entrance. "I think your friend needs help maintaining her composure," I observed. "Though I suppose it's hard to maintain an image of sophistication when you're shouting about delivery trucks in the lobby of a luxury hotel." Sarah stood up, her designer cover-up hanging limply on her defeated shoulders. "What happens now?" "Now?" I gestured to a nearby group of guests who were openly filming Katherine's tantrum. "Now you get to experience what viral humiliation feels like. The Architectural Digest feature comes out next week. Your social media followers are already questioning your silence and—" I checked my watch. "I believe the hotel's official press release about its new ownership goes live in about an hour." "Press release?" "Oh yes, complete with a detailed history of how the owner came to acquire his stake, including, of course, quotes from various staff members about how certain guests treated them over the years." I smiled. "Your friends were particularly unkind to the service staff, weren't they?" Sarah's face crumpled as she realized the full extent of what was coming. Every cruel comment, every entitled demand, every moment of mockery, all of it was about to become public knowledge. "If you'll excuse me," I stood up, straightening my perfectly tailored jacket, "I have a dinner reservation at La Sponda." "The chef's table, of course, though I suppose you remember that, since you bragged about booking it yourself before your reservation was mysteriously cancelled." As I walked away, I heard her phone buzz again. Probably another notification about James's hotel acquisition, or maybe news about Katherine's lobby-side meltdown going viral. It didn't matter anymore. The carefully constructed world they'd built on false sophistication and social media pretense was crashing down, and no amount of designer clothes or luxury bookings could save them now. That evening, as I enjoyed my private dinner at the chef's table, I could see them huddled at their small table near the kitchen doors. Every time they flinched at the sound of plates being cleared or service staff rushing past, I raised my glass in their direction. Signor Michael, the chef, approached my table with a special dessert creation. I heard what those ladies said about my cuisine last summer. The comment about it being adequate for provincial tastes. I smiled. And now? He gestured to their table, where they picked at their standard menu items. Unable to access the special chef's tasting menu I'd arranged to be fully committed during their stay. Now they learn that true taste cannot be bought or posted about. It must be earned. As the evening drew to a close, I returned to the Positano suite, leaving them to trudge up 4 flights of stairs to their standard rooms. Their humiliation was complete, their social status in tatters, their carefully curated images destroyed. Sometimes revenge isn't about getting even. Sometimes it's about teaching people that real class has nothing to do with room categories or social media posts. Sometimes it's about showing them that true luxury isn't about who you pretend to be, it's about who you really are. And from my infinity pool, watching the same sunset they'd planned to post about, but now could only view through standard room windows, I realized that the best revenge of all was simply letting them live with the consequences of their own actions. After all, karma has a way of booking people exactly where they deserve to be. The winter sun streamed through the windows of my New York office as I reviewed the latest reports from Le Sirenuse. The hotel's reputation had soared since the infamous summer incident, with the Positano suite now booked solid 2 years in advance. Funny how a little scandal can be good for business. The Architectural Digest feature had been just the beginning. The story of the mocked husband who secretly bought his tormentor's favorite hotel had gone viral, spawning countless articles and social media discussions. Sarah and her friends had become cautionary tales in the luxury travel world, examples of how nouveau riche pretension gets exposed. "Sir," my assistant entered with the morning's social updates, "I thought you might want to see these." I flipped through the reports, allowing myself a small smile. Victoria's divorce had become increasingly messy, especially after James revealed how much of their luxury lifestyle had been funded by credit cards and lies. She'd been forced to move in with her sister, the same sister whose Bora Bora trip she'd tried so desperately to outdo. Katherine's lifestyle blog had shut down after losing all its sponsors. Her last post, a bitter rant about fake luxury and betrayal, had only hastened her fall from social media grace. Now she was working as a junior travel agent, booking standard rooms for regular tourists. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. And Sarah? The last photos I'd seen showed her selling her designer wardrobe at a high-end consignment shop. Her social media accounts remained dormant, the carefully curated image of luxury she'd built over years, now tainted by reality. "There's more," my assistant added. "The rival hotel James bought? He's just announced a partnership with Le Sirenuse. We'll be managing their premium suite program." Perfect timing, I mused. Just in time for summer bookings to open. I picked up my phone to find 3 missed calls from Sarah. She'd been trying to reach me ever since the news broke about her favorite spa resort in Switzerland, another property I'd quietly acquired. The thought of her realizing, one by one, that all her luxury haunts were now under my influence brought a particular satisfaction. A notification popped up on my screen. Someone had tagged Le Sirenuse in a post. It was a photo from that summer. Sarah, Victoria and Katherine struggling with their luggage up the stairs to their standard rooms, while I lounged by the infinity pool in the background. The caption read, Never judge someone by their room category. They might own the hotel. Karma is real. Luxury lessons. The post had already gone viral, adding another chapter to their ongoing humiliation. But the best part? The photo had been shared by James's new girlfriend, Victoria's former personal assistant, who'd witnessed years of their entitled behavior firsthand. "Your table is confirmed at Le Bernardin for tonight," my assistant reminded me. "They mentioned that Sarah tried to book the chef's table for her birthday next week, but unfortunately it's reserved indefinitely for special guests." I nodded, remembering how Sarah used to mock my dining choices. Now she couldn't get a prime reservation at any top restaurant in New York. Amazing how quickly word spreads in luxury hospitality circles about unwanted guests. Oh, and the Peninsula called. They're interested in discussing a similar arrangement to Le Sirenuse. Apparently, their premium suites could use some reorganization. I smiled, thinking of all the other hotels Sarah and her friends had bragged about staying in. One by one, their favorite luxury haunts were falling under my influence, not out of revenge anymore, but because success truly is the best revenge. The final twist of the knife had come last week, when Le Sirenuse announced its new charitable initiative, providing luxury hospitality training to service industry workers. The program would be housed in the same premium suites Sarah and her friends had once claimed as their territory. Now hotel staff from around the world would learn about real luxury in the very rooms they'd been mocked in. One last thing, my assistant handed me a final report. The reality show producers called again. They're very interested in the story, especially after seeing the security footage of Katherine's meltdown in the lobby. I waved it away. Some things are better left to social media and imagination. After all, true sophistication knows when. Enough is enough. As I looked out over the Manhattan skyline, I thought about how differently things had turned out from what Sarah and her friends had planned. They'd wanted to exclude and humiliate me, to prove their superiority through room categories and social media posts. Instead, they'd learned the hardest lesson of all. Real class can't be booked or posted about. It's something you either have or you don't. And now everyone knew exactly what category they belonged in. I picked up my phone and sent a quick message to Giuseppe at Le Sirenuse. "Save the standard rooms by the service entrance. Something tells me we'll be seeing them again next summer. After all, some people never learn, but at least now they're staying exactly where they deserve to be." The response came quickly. "Of course, sir. Though perhaps this time we should schedule the delivery trucks for 4 a.m. instead of 5. I hear the sunrise view of the garbage bins is particularly special at that hour. Sometimes karma books the room, but it's the little touches that make luxury truly unforgettable." Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.